Many people don't realize is that the change in hormones in the menopause transition, we have a decline in progesterone, then our estrogen goes haywire, and then a decline in estrogen. They actually affect our ability to emotionally regulate ourselves. So if you had trouble with it before perimenopause, you may have even more trouble with it after or during the menopause transition because progesterone is our calming hormone. GABA, our calming neurotransmitters, declining. Estrogen is associated with serotonin, our happy hormone. So with less estrogen, we have less serotonin. And the decline in estrogen actually keeps us in cortisol activation longer. So it's harder for us to get out of that stress response.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. So with me, I'm turning 41 this year. That's kind of crazy. I still often ask myself who let me have kids. Like, I don't feel old enough to have kids, but yet I do. I have a 16-year-old now. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5.5-year-old. And I don't know how I got here, but now I'm entering this phase where my hormones are starting to change. And so if you're like, gosh, Michelle, you are certainly having a lot of perimenopause experts come on, you are right, because this is where I'm at in life. And I think a lot of you listeners are too. And so I just love finding people coming on here to share what they know to help us experience this phase of our life better. Because it's a lot. It does a huge number to us, just like puberty did to us with that huge influx of hormones. Now it's like they're kind of going away. And it's changing a lot of what we have come to grow used to. So that's why I have invited Sharon Pendlington, menopause and stress resilience coach, to come and talk to us about how we can experience our emotions differently during menopause and perimenopause. Because I don't know about you, but like, the rage is real. And sometimes it's like, why is this happening? Why have I turned into this dragon with my family? What's going on with my mood? And it can almost feel like you don't even recognize yourself. And so we're going to talk about the value of emotional regulation when you're going through all this stuff and how it helps you. And so thank you so much for being here, Sharon. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I know I'm not the only one. I get multiple texts a week. Like, I am done. This week sucks. I need some girl time. So welcome, Sharon. Please let us know who you are by sharing where you live, how old your kids are, and what made you want to do work in the menopause field.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle. I'm 53. Actually, no, see, this is what happens after 50. I'm 54 now. My kids are 19 and 22. And I have a husband at home. And the reason I got into this was exactly, you were just talking about the rage. That was my first symptom, which I didn't realize until later, of course. I was wondering, why am I flying off the handle at nothing? I remember throwing the phone down. It was over nothing and breaking the phone. And that was my moment of, okay, something needs to happen here. But first for me, it was the rage, the emotional dysregulation, and then the sleep. I didn't sleep for almost 20 years, severe insomnia, many years, 20 minutes a night. So that's actually what made me try. I really wanted to fix the sleep because I was convinced I'm not sleeping. This is what's making me so volatile. So I became a yoga instructor because yoga was really helpful for my stress. And then I became a nutritionist because I was like, maybe supplements will help, or maybe maybe I'm eating the wrong thing. Then I became a health coach. So just finding my way, trying to fix what was happening in my perimenopause transition. And I ended up working in this space. So I've been working in hormone health for midlife women for a decade now. But what actually changed things for me was developing mindfulness. I learned that what kind of my automatic way of reacting to things was to fix it. All those certifications, I want to fix it, control it, want it to be perfect. Like I needed that perfect 8 nights sleep or 8 hours of sleep. But that is what was actually keeping me awake at night because I was in the stress response trying to fix it. And my cortisol levels were high, which keeps you up. We want our cortisol to be low in the evening. So that's actually what turned things around for me. And so that's why I continue to I'm passionate about working in this space. Because not only did I sleep again, but I stopped blaming my husband for everything that didn't work out in my favor. I started not controlling my kids. I mean, they might say a little bit still, but I'm working on it. But right. So it just has this cascade effect when we can be emotionally regulated that it can change so much for us.
Absolutely. I mean, they say that the health of your other relationship starts with the health of your relationship with yourself. And that truly has to do with emotional regulation, being able to know yourself really well on that level that a lot of us have not been taught to foster or nurture, because I feel like most families have been all about just like pretend everything's okay, don't worry about these other issues, it'll go away, and kind of like this avoidance, because it is really uncomfortable to talk about things that are you admitting that you're flawed, right? That there's something quote unquote imperfect about you. And I totally resonate with the collecting all of the certifications, because that's totally me too, right? I've done that as well, trying to fix the quote unquote broken parts of me, only to realize that it's in accepting them that really helps you grow, accepting them and moving forward, given the lessons that you've gotten from those experiences. So I love that we're going to dive into this, because that is a huge feat to work through. You slept 20 minutes a night. Like, how did you not just roll over and like die? I mean, that's intense. 20 minutes a day. How did you do that
Well,
for so long?
because I was constantly in the stress response. So my body was constantly producing cortisol, even in the day. This is me. I'm a perfectionist, right? So
Yeah.
cortisol's job, it's your stress hormone. Its job is to raise your blood sugar, raise your heart rate, raise your blood pressure, everything to give you energy to fight or flee. So when people would say, "How are you functioning?" And I would say, "I have plenty of energy." But I was just running on cortisol the whole time, right? And
Yeah.
eventually that cortisol gets dysregulated. Yeah. But that's how I'm
Wow.
doing it, just running on cortisol.
So you were wired.
Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
my
So,
gosh.
and then in that wired and tired stage. So you're wired not in the morning when you want to have energy, but you're wired right before bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the morning you're tired until that cortisol kicks in again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Um, So, for those who are not so familiar with this world of emotional regulation, let's kind of take a few steps backwards and describe what is emotional regulation to those who are like, what are you guys talking about? But I know that I can resonate with her symptoms, and I know I want to resolve those.
Yeah, so I mean, I think people can identify a lot easier what it feels like to be emotionally dysregulated,
Mm-hmm.
right? And most of us don't tune into ourselves to know when that is happening. right? When am I in the stress response? And when am I responding wisely to challenges? And mainly we're talking about challenges. We're not often emotionally dysregulated when things are going 100% well for us. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're faced with a challenge, what is your response? How does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind? Do you become extra vigilant? Do you become anxious? Do you start over worrying? Do you start ruminating or catastrophizing? In your body, are you holding tension in your shoulders, your bellies? You might be clenching your fists. So these are all signs that we're in the stress response or we're triggered, we're getting emotionally dysregulated. Lots of ways to kind of explain it, but we need to have that awareness to notice when it's happening, because usually we notice afterward. Like
Mm-hmm.
after I blame my husband, then I think, yeah, that probably wasn't the wisest choice, right? It's a practice, and Michelle, you require a lot of tools to be able
Mm-hmm.
to notice that happening in the moment so that
Yes.
you can make a choice about how to respond.
Absolutely. So, using another example, you may often feel emotionally dysregulated during conflict with your spouse, right? This is when you're like, maybe you first start the conversation out, everyone's like calm, cool, collected. All of a sudden, it seems like the conversation has taken several steps up a notch and you guys are spiraling. It's the back and forth. Maybe it's the yelling, the criticizing, and you're saying anything and everything to end the conversation or, up the ante, and you're like not who you want to be in the moment, but you can't help yourself, right? So this is one way you may experience emotional dysregulation, and being able to regulate yourself really helps every facet of your life. For this conversation, we're mostly talking about perimenopause, but I just want you to know that this is not something that we are born knowing how to do. So if you're like, oh, I just have really horrible control over myself, or this is just how I am, I just have a hot temper, I just get like this, like, okay, you might have a tendency to have a shorter fuse, but learning to be emotionally regulated, that's not something that anyone was born knowing how to do. They were taught it either because their parents already knew how, or they sought it out themselves, or maybe they're like you and they listen to this episode and they're like, oh, this is something I can actually learn to do, like be able to recognize it's happening within me and change it. So, in the context of perimenopause, how has learning how to become more emotionally regulated when you get dysregulated helped your experience?
Great question. So, what many people don't realize is that the change in hormones in the menopause transition, we have a decline in progesterone, then our estrogen goes haywire, and then we have a decline in estrogen. And there's changes to our other hormones too, but let's just kind of talk about these ones. They actually affect our ability to emotionally regulate ourselves. So if you had trouble with it before perimenopause, you may have even more trouble with it after or during the menopause transition, because progesterone is our calming hormone. It's declining. GABA, our calming neurotransmitter, is declining. Estrogen is associated with serotonin, our happy hormone. So with less estrogen, we have less serotonin. And the decline in estrogen actually keeps us in cortisol activation longer. So it's harder for us to get out of that stress response. And we all have these habitual ways of reacting. This too was learned. Like we can learn emotional regulation, and we have learned emotional dysregulation. Someone modeled that for us. Someone like physically told us something. So these are all learned behaviors, but then we practice them again and again and again. They become automatic, and our brain is wired that way. Oh, this happens, I go to blame. That's my example, right? Oh, any difficulty, blame. I don't want to take that responsibility. I'm perfect. I'm going to blame somebody else. So our hormones make it even more difficult to regulate those changes. And you might be feeling this in your luteal phase of your cycle. if you're not perimenopausal yet, right? We have those very similar changes to our hormones where a few days before your period or even the week before, you're overwhelmed easier. You cry at things you may not cry with previously in other times of your cycle. For instance, you might notice mood changes. So there's definitely, we know that there's a hormonal piece to it. And then the other thing to consider is that when we are in the stress response, so we're blaming, for instance, maybe feeling guilty about that after keeps us in the stress response. We are depleting our adrenal glands, and our adrenal glands are meant to produce our hormones for us as our ovarian production declines. So the adrenal glands produce our hormones and they produce our stress hormones. They're always going to prioritize our stress hormones. Those are survival hormones. So if you're producing cortisol, you're not going to produce progesterone, you're not going to produce DHEA, which converts to estrogen and testosterone. So it becomes this cycle. The more emotionally dysregulated you are, the more you're in the stress response, depleting your adrenals. So now you can't produce those hormones. So it just becomes this never ending cycle. So it is more challenging in the perimenopause stage for many people.
Oh man. That's a lot. I'm seeing this as two different paths that you need to take, where one is like, okay, let's lower your stress, but also you can't eliminate all stress, right? There's going to be stress no matter what. And then also, while you make better decisions for your life and really be honest about what you have the capacity for, right? Like what you say yes to, what you say no to, you also need to learn the tools on how to handle stress better, right?
Exactly.
Is that what you found to be helpful for your journey through menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all human. We are not going to do this perfectly. There's going to be times when we react not in alignment with our values. And then what do we do next? So if we feel guilty about it, for instance, that just keeps us in the stress response. So the sooner we know that, oh, I'm being triggered, and the sooner we can get out of that, the better. But also, yes, one of the most valuable things you mentioned here, Michelle, is how do I resource myself? Like we're all more reactive if we haven't slept, we miss lunch, right? So we need to resource ourselves so we are less likely to automatically go into that stress response, which is challenging.
It is. It is. And now looking back, I understand why my mom protected her like need to go running every day during her lunch hour so much. And I don't like running, so that's not going to be me. But over the last, I don't know, few years, I've noticed how big of a difference it truly makes and how much bandwidth I have to handle the kids, life, all of that, if I have a normal routine where I move my body. And I'm very protective of that now. So, like, almost every weekday, I am doing something to move my body, whether it's like a hip hop dance class, or I'm going walking for like a few miles, or I have tennis practice or something. Like, I'm going to do something because I know what happens to me when I don't do that. My next step is to get better about my sleep because I don't get nearly as much sleep as I would like, because I know that once I can get that dialed in, I will continue to set myself up for even more success with how my day goes and how much I'm able to handle when, those days and times that the kids don't want to cooperate so much. I don't want to be that mom who like snaps at them and can't handle them just being kids, honestly. That's what they do, right? And I think that a lot of people don't realize that this is something that they can change about how they experience, right? Like, I know like wine culture is really big for moms. They're like, oh, I just need to like unwind after a long day. And next thing you know, they're like drinking a bottle of wine at the end of the day. And they're not changing anything about their situation, but they're temporarily feeling better about what's going on. And I think much of learning emotional regulation is setting yourself up for success, giving yourself the tools to know how to navigate this in a way that feels more aligned, like in a way that you would feel more proud of yourself, right? So, what would you recommend that people do to just take that first step towards emotional regulation?
Yeah, I love how you're talking about what we find helpful, like starting to
Mm-hmm.
understand what is helpful and what is a coping tool I'm using, but maybe isn't so helpful.
Right.
Right? One exercise can just be to write down chronologically what you do in a day. Like just take a journal, take a piece of paper, you wake up, you make breakfast, just generally what happens in your day. And then make a note of which of these activities are actually nurturing you, which ones are, we were just talking about this in my program, which ones are building your bank account so you feel resourced, and which of these activities are actually depleting. Because we all don't want to feel uncomfortable,
Right.
right? So we're going to choose some sort of behavior, but we want to choose those behaviors consciously. And then take a look, see what's depleting. What can I change about this? Can I do it earlier in the day or a different time? Like me checking my emails first thing in the morning, not particularly nurturing or nourishing for me, very depleting. But if I'm happy to do it at the end of my day as a way of bookending my day, for instance, doesn't feel as depleting. So, what can we change about those depleting tasks that we carry out? And where can we insert more tasks that nourish us? And this can be difficult because we may have been modeled or messaged that we are meant to prioritize others, even at our own expense. So, sometimes it's actually looking at what your belief system is and if that still serves. And it may or it may not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's really powerful is that it really is just small tweaks that we need to make, but we need to challenge how we do things in order to get to that point, right? So it's not like, don't check your emails. It's like, well, do you need to check them first thing in the morning? So, like, I have a rule for myself because I learned that it's very stressful for me to check text messages and emails first thing when I wake up. So like now I don't even take a look at my phone until after I've gotten ready, the kids are off to school. Maybe I'll check as we're going out the door in case something related to the school comes up, right? But when I used to do that, where I would, check it first thing in the morning, I just like noticed my state changed versus like easing into the day. It was like, okay, I'm fired up now. It's like it didn't feel good to me. And I think it's all about what serves me, what doesn't serve me, right? And that's going to be different
Mhm.
for everyone. So we're not saying that how Sharon and I do things is exactly what you should do. We're just inviting you to be more intentional and aware of what are the things that help you be a better you and make that a priority. Now, I get that you still have to do things
Mhm.
that you might not want to do. That's part of life. And to that, it's like, okay, well, what purpose does that serve? Can you tweak how you do that so that you can enjoy it better, whether it's throwing on an audiobook while you're doing something or changing when you do it, right? And so I love that there's like flexibility with how you want to personalize things so that you can insert more moments of emotional regulation into your day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned previously, Michelle, know what your capacity is before you take the next task. We tend to decide, okay, I'm just going to keep going. I'll do the next thing. I have an extra 10 minutes. I'm just going to fill it up. I'll maybe check those emails an extra time today. We
Mm-hmm.
fill up our time trying to complete our to-do list. But if we could check in throughout the day multiple times, what is my capacity? Can I take on this next task? Or do I just need to grab a glass of water? Or maybe I just need to walk around the block? Like, what truly is my capacity? So we can look after ourselves.
Oh, that's so big. I think we often push ourselves because of expectations that have been put on us from our upbringing and, like you said, our belief system, right? Like, what do we believe we need to do in order to be a good woman, a good wife, a good mom, a good business owner, a good employee? And again, it really comes down to, are you willing to challenge yourself to take a look at those things and say, is that actually me? Does this work for me? And if not, like permission to change things, right? Permission to be like, what we've been doing doesn't work for us. So let's like change the system here. It's kind of like, I know it's like January, right? So a lot of people are like, okay, how can we make sure that this year is going to go better? And so for my family, we've been in like, let's try and like tweak our system mode. So we revamped our like whole approach to collectively keeping the house tidy, right? So we've got different systems in place with the kids, and my husband and I are like looking at projects to do and how we're going to improve, in different ways. And this gets to be a thing that you get to do with yourself too. You can make decisions on what boundaries you want to put in place with your phone, for example, or with work, or with friends, or with family, with your spouse, right? All of that is going to support you in growing your capacity, because you just like, it's kind of like one of those things where you won't know the difference until you feel the weight come off of you from all that pressure, whether you're putting it on yourself or other people are putting it on you. And then you're like, gosh, life feels so much lighter.
Love that. Yeah, more ease.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So with emotional regulation, let's say someone's activated, right? They are feeling like they're in a rage. They're no longer in the position to like be proactive about something. They're knee deep in it right now. What's something that they can do to regulate their nervous system in that moment to snap out of
Hmm.
it?
Right. So, there is a practice of just literally stopping. So
Mm-hmm.
pause, like you're triggered, just pause. You may need to go to another room. You may need to let somebody know, I just need a minute, but just stop what you're doing. And then ideally you would have found something ahead of time, what you find grounding. So for some people, it's their breath. They just take a few breaths. Some people tune into their feet or their hands if the breath doesn't feel like a steadying place for them. But knowing what you find grounding, and then observing just what's happening in your body, in your mind. So, oh, okay, what is happening? How is stress manifesting for me right now? Because it's different for everyone, right? For some people, they don't sleep. Other people don't think very clearly. Some people have hot flashes. Some people have neck and shoulder tension, right? It depends. But what's happening right now with my body, with my mind, what emotions coming up, what thoughts, and then that pause can create a little more space for us to respond more wisely. But we
Yes.
just need that pause, right? Things happen so quickly, things spiral very quickly. So, can we just give ourselves the grace and the time to have that just moment for ourselves? This might be 10 seconds, it might be a couple minutes. Usually in the beginning when we're practicing this, it's, maybe at least a couple minutes that we need to just give ourselves that break.
Yeah, I think tuning in to your body is the biggest thing that we should have been taught earlier on, but we weren't, unfortunately. And the reason for that, listeners, if you're like, why does she keep talking about like tuning into how we're experiencing things through our body? It's because our body is always the first to signal to us that something needs to change, right? Either something needs to stop, or you need to remove yourself from a situation, or something. Something needs to change. And our body can't necessarily like talk to us in words. And so it talks to us through how we feel, right? Like she said, the shoulders, it could be your jaw, it could be your fists. So like notice like, how come I feel tense right now? What is my body trying to tell me? Right? That's always going to come first. It's not always going to make logical sense to you, but the sooner you get to know your body and listen to it, the more you'll be able to pick up, like, oh, actually, I have been getting stomach aches every time something like this happens. Interesting. Right. And so a big piece of that is your bodily awareness. And so I invite you to start paying attention. Like whenever you're in a stressful situation, notice what your body is doing. It's always signaling to you. It's like waving these flags like, hey, slow down, or let's get out of this situation. Something about this isn't right for us.
Mhm. And it's such an honest communicator. It's
It
not going to
is.
lie to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so with perimenopause, lots of things happen and they kind of like change throughout time. So, as people are building up their emotional regulation skills, what do you recommend that they do to kind of like go with how things are fluctuating? Because I know it's not like a one and done thing. Like one day your emotions are changed and then it stays that way for the rest of your time. Like I know it fluctuates, right? So what have you been helping your clients do to navigate the oh so many changes and waves and phases of perimenopause and then finally reaching menopause?
I mean, I have a lot of tools that I draw on, but one important one is just self-compassion.
Mm,
So imagine you're in a meeting and you forget your words. Our automatic, what we may have been taught is all about self-criticism. I
mm,
should have done better. But can we just hold what's happening with some kindness, knowing that there's billions of other people going through something very similar, right? Even if it may not be the exact same circumstances, but that same emotion, they're still feeling. And just being kind to ourselves. This is something that we have not been taught. We're taught to strive and achieve, and we're very outcome based society. And can we just hold with kindness, even what you notice showing up in your body? Because we can be very judgmental about our physical body. So, how do we find a way to just hold this with some kindness? I'm noticing tension. Because as soon as we start the judgment, that keeps us in the stress response. And we're
mm.
trying to regulate the nervous system. We're trying to get out of that stress response. So allowing it to be here. Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering words, and just name it. Name it in your workplace, name it with your family, as not a bad thing, and try your best not to catastrophize it, because with the hormone changes in menopause, what's happening with, especially with the neurological symptoms, is your brain is adapting to the lower levels of hormones. So this doesn't go on forever. Now, some people still struggle if their adrenals are really depleted, even 10 years after menopause. But generally, once your brain has adapted to those lower levels of hormones, those symptoms improve.
Oh my
So it
gosh,
can be easy to catastrophize about it.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of like, being a teenager and going through puberty. And it's like with your brain and your hormones, like you're not fully developed neurologically until you're like 26, 27. So it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense that we would need to adapt and transition. And it's not like something overnight. I mean, thank goodness it isn't overnight because that would be kind of wild, right? But I think self compassion is something that we all need to learn, whether we are, pre perimenopausal or perimenopausal or menopausal. That's something that more of us needs to practice because we are so harsh on ourselves. And you're right, like
Mhm.
there are so many others who are going through something similar. And that's what I love most about working with other moms, like you, like collaborating with other moms. It's like we all get it. There's so many times where I'll be recording an episode with someone and I'll completely lose my train of thought. But like they're not on the other side, like, oh my gosh, get it together. You're so unprofessional. They'll be like, oh, did you have like a brain fart? Yes, I did. Because they get it. And I feel like we judge ourselves so much harsher than anyone else is. Like we all get it. We've been there and we're
Mhm.
still in it together. So let's like ease up on ourselves because that, again, like you said,
Mhm.
only increases our cortisol. And that's what we're trying to figure out how to decrease from what's in under our control, of course. Okay, so you talked about your course. Can you tell us more about
Mhm.
that?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I offer a small group 90-day nervous system reset program for women in the menopause transition. And so we meet weekly, and I love that it's a group format because we learn so much from one another, even if it's just to hear that somebody else is going through the same thing. And we're building that self-compassion piece. We're learning to tune into ourselves. We're knowing how to look after ourselves and know what our capacity is. And we have enough time in this 90-day program to start noticing changes very quickly, but enough time to integrate all the tools as well so that we can regulate ourselves, which improves our cognition, our sleep, our mood, our hot flashes, all of those pieces.
Amazing. So, are you saying that with learning emotional regulation and really setting ourselves up for success, theoretically, women would experience less symptoms or less severe symptoms?
Yeah, in our program, we track depending on what symptom you're coming in with. Like it's often more than one, but sometimes there's a really big one, like sleep or
Mm-hmm.
losing our train of thought. We track those statistically. So we participants fill out a questionnaire, and then that's their baseline, and then they can see how they've improved by the end of the program.
That's
Mhm.
cool. I love that. Okay, so there's proof that working on this is going to improve your experience of your transition into your menopausal state. So if you want that for yourself, please go check out Sharon's content, her course. Sharon, where can people connect with you?
So my website is sharonpendlington.com. And I think you're going to include some links in the show notes as well, so they can reach me there.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for being a part of the show, Sharon. I think we all need to like band together and get through this together because that's the value of community and us getting through this challenging thing we call life together. Like we can learn from each other, we can validate each other's experiences. We are definitely not alone, and know that there are a lot of resources out there to help you with whatever it is that you're going through. So if you are wanting to experience a better version of perimenopause or menopause, please go check out Sharon's stuff. Let her know you found her from this show. And of course, if you know someone that could benefit from listening to this episode, please send them this way. Better yet, share this in your Instagram stories and tag both Sharon and I so that we can give you a shout out. And if you love this show, I would so appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's what helps the show grow and for more people like you to get the support that they need. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you again, Sharon. I'll catch you all back here on the next episode. Bye. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perta Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.